Good morning, everyone. Well, that was an eventful first 5 minutes, wasn't it? Welcome, everybody, to Coffee with Steve. I'm your host, Steve, from ProgrammingMadeEasy.com. And so I thought I would start off today with a question that I got from Charlie CK. So let's see if we can throw that graphic back up. Let me try. All right. So, this question comes from Charlie. Yeah, what's up, Steve? Hey, Todd. All right. So, this question comes from Charlie. He asks, "Hi, Steve. I'm avidly consuming. Make this a little bigger. There we go. I'm avidly consuming your videos, and the more I learn, the more I wish I had found your channel earlier. Anyway, I'm curious whether you have a video or can make one in which you share your journey through the world of IT and software development. I honestly believe that you are an inspiration to thousands, and many, myself included, will be interested to know about the path you walked in order to get where you are today. It would be very interesting to know what you did before getting into IT, how you got into IT, and the techniques, strategies, and education you used to learn and apply so much. Also, did your formal education consist of software IT discipline? Well, hope to see a video which takes us all through your conquests." Well, Charlie, thank you so much for that. Let me switch back over. All right. So, let me first start off by thanking Charlie for his question. That's a really good question. I'm sure that some people have been asking that, and I thought it would be a fitting way to start off this series on Coffee with Steve. So, let me talk first a little bit about my childhood. Like, that's where everybody really wants to hear, right? Like, how did Steve grow up? Well, don't forget to take your sips of coffee, by the way, right along with me. So, it started off when I was a kid. I was very, very young. My mom and I, we lived in California, and my grandfather owned a Commodore 64. And I thought this was the coolest thing in the world, and I was so glad when my mom finally was able to purchase one, which got a Commodore 64. Used to play things like Pole Position and Tooth Invaders and Donkey Kong and all that sort of stuff. I loved that thing. I loved playing games on a Commodore 64. Of course, I was a kid, and this is actually pre-Nintendo days. This was, I don't know, like 86, 87, somewhere around in there. So I really had a pretty early introduction as a kid into computers, and I loved it. But obviously, that really didn't take right away for me. What I ended up doing was my mom and we ended up moving to various locations. I actually spent some time with my father, and when I came back to live with my mom again, not too long after I moved back with her, she met a gentleman named Scott. And this gentleman, who was a technician for phones, liked computers and technology and electronics, and had his own computer at his house. And I loved going over to his place every time my mom wanted to go, spend a night over there with him. And he had a son, and both his son and I were very avid computer enthusiasts because he had a computer and we could do all sorts of great stuff. So I was able to. This was in high school. This was probably when I was a freshman, and we could do things like writing up reports. We could do check out. There was no real internet connection for us. We didn't have internet, but we did have something called a BBS. So for those of you who are in my age bracket, you might remember these BBS systems. They were a way of using your telephone to dial into someone else's computer that was hosting some sort of BBS application. And I thought this was so cool. We had in the Bend, Redmond area, which is where I'm at now too, but growing up as a kid, we had several BBSs in the area. And you could log into this BBS using your modem, and you could with a terminal application, you could dial in, you could leave messages, and everything was basically ASCII and ANSI based, right? So these are really, really old. I would hesitate to call them graphics. They weren't really graphics, they were just text. Um, but ANSI was a little bit, had a colored text, basically, is what you could do with ANSI. Whereas ASCII was just, straight like green or gray or whatever the default color was of the terminal. And it's amazing to me that I still see ASCII graphics in things today. It's kind of funny that a lot of things, like when I'm working on Java, when you're starting up a Java Tomcat server, you typically get some sort of ASCII banner at the top, which is just kind of interesting to me because I remember those good old days. Well, so we were using the computer to dial in all the time, and I decided this was so cool being able to dial into BBS systems that when I got my very first computer, that was what I decided to do. And I mean my computer. This wasn't the Commodore 64 thing where it was the family's. This was my 486 DX computer. This is pre-Pentium days, right? And I got my very first 486, had, oh gosh, like 512 megs of 512 megs of hard drive space. Um, there was no gig anything, no gig hard drive, no gig memory, nothing. But I was able to run a bulletin board system off of this thing. And I used a little application called Turbo BBS, or actually not Turbo BBS. I'm sorry, I always get them confused. It's Turboard. That was what I used. It was a little application created by a gentleman by the name of Sean Rhodes, and I owe him a huge bit of gratitude for getting me into what I really love to do. And so I became a sysop at a very young age. I was just a teenager in high school, and I became a system operator. And so I had this bulletin board system running on my computer, and you could add games to it. Like one of the most popular one was called Legend of the Red Dragon. I had this other one. I think it was called Castles, where you like fired off cannon shot at your opponent. There was all sorts of these different games that you could play that were all basically textual, right? They were adventure games kind of thing. And I got a bunch of those. You could also post messages for people. You could leave pictures or images or even video files. But video files even back then took like huge amounts of disk space. Because again, 512 megs of hard drive space on this thing. But I was running a DOS application. You could run Windows. I was obviously running 3.0, 3.1, and 3.11 Windows back in the day. And that was kind of what really started me in the IT world. Was my stepfather now, Scott, who my mom eventually did marry. I really latched on to the technology. I really loved it at a young age. And I went into high school kind of with this technology mind going into it. Now, here's where things kind of take a little turn. So I was not a very good student in high school. I hated school, and I mean hated it. I thought it was an absolute waste of my time. I didn't like hardly any of my teachers. There were a couple that I really enjoyed. It's funny because I just had my 20-year reunion, and we were talking and reminiscing about some of the teachers we had. And every once in a while, I'll come across somebody that went to Redmond High, and I'll be able to chat with them about Mr. Winslow, or Mr. Wyndham, or Mr. Penhollow, or all sorts of different characters that we would run into. Mr. Wyndham was definitely my favorite. He was an English teacher. But anyway, bottom line is I really, really struggled in school. I hated it. And so really this meant that I was not going to go to college unless I was going to pay to go to community college. And my mom struck a deal with me that I could live there essentially rent free if I went to college. Otherwise I had to pay rent. And most of the time, most months, I ended up paying rent because I just didn't like school. I didn't even like going to college. I thought it was all just kind of silly nonsense. And I started to work. I picked up an actual regular job. It wasn't 9 to 5. I was working at I think at the time at Kentucky Fried Chicken. Yes, I was a KFC. I ran the front. I tried my hand at drive-through. I wasn't too good at drive-through, but I was working the front. Anyway, I started at a very young age getting into actual like work, like this is a job. And you have to understand also, this was the 90s. The computer industry wasn't anything like it is today. There was no real software to really speak of, right? There wasn't very much there. Um, but one of the things that I started getting really into was this thing called IRC. And there was an application called MIRC. Now, IRC is Internet Relay Chat. It's really kind of this uh, back end. I don't know. It's kind of a what's the word? Like an underground kind of system. There's not a lot of people know about it. Some people do, but it's a way of just basically chatting, and it's been around for a very, very long time. Basically, since the internet started, we've had internet relay chat. So there was this program called MIRC that was written by Khalid Marambe. I actually remember his name, Khalid Marambe. But you could write script for his MIRC application, and I got really good at this. I was writing those kind of applications. I was writing MIRC applications. The one that I was really doing was Protection Pro was my first one. Was this script I called Protection Pro, and it was a way of basically locking down a channel. So if you were an operator on a channel, you could prevent floods. You could have desync issues because sometimes servers would split and rejoin because they'd get disconnected from one another. And this was kind of my bread and butter here. Was okay. I'm going to solve this problem of how are we going to solve if these servers all split and everybody comes back. How do you get everything to work? So what I did was I put MIRC. I ended up getting this Protection Pro, and I'd hand this out to all the operators of these channels. And then also I would set up a few bots. I'd set up some instances of MIRC that I could remote control through this script application that I also wrote. And I could get all these bots to kind of communicate with one another and do commands and stuff. And they all had Protection Pro loaded up on them. So I could basically go into any channel and basically run it. I could just bring my bots in there and run the channel for people. And I really got to know some great people. Some friends that I still have today that are in the industry. And we it's kind of funny because we're the old timers now. And we all kind of remember these fond days of the open internet. And there was no such thing as Facebook. There was no Google. There was none of that, right? It was like Alta Vista, and Yahoo was, of course, the primary search engine. But I didn't really like Yahoo all that much. I used Hotbot back in the day. Anyway, so is WebAssembly the future? Oh yeah, I'll get to your guys' questions. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted here, but I will definitely get to your guys' questions here in a little bit. I would prefer if you guys limit your questions to what we're talking about. Right, so typically every day I'm going to come up with some sort of topic to discuss. And today's topic is, how did you get into the industry? So I'd love to hear your guys' story on this. And you guys can type it up. You guys can print it out how you guys got into the industry. And I'll go ahead and read them off. So anyway, okay, going back into what I was doing when I was a kid. So I got into MIRC. I wrote up all these scripts. It was my first real delve into programming. And actually, through MIRC, I ended up getting to know someone who actually wanted me to program in JavaScript for them. And I knew a little bit of JavaScript. I had done some things because I had built a web page. And so I was doing some JavaScript stuff. And that was really kind of that, along with MIRC scripting, was my first real programming experience. So, okay. Life happens, right? And I programming was not really a job at this point. You got to think the mid to late 90s, there was the .com boom going on, but it really wasn't for me. I wasn't really in the right age bracket for that to be a thing. Right? I wasn't middle-aged at that time. I wasn't in my late 20s or 30s. I was still a teenager. So for me, my options weren't really there. Community college wasn't really offering any sort of computer science degree or anything like that. Computer sciences and technology was not on anybody's radar in my area. So it was kind of one of those things where that was not going to be an option for me. So, but I ended up working, and I didn't go to college for anything. I did go to college briefly for one semester. I took psychology. And I actually dropped because of an English teacher that I thought was an absolute moron. It was funny because I was in a speech and debate. That's a whole other topic, but yeah. I decided to drop out of college for the one semester I took. And I ended up just kind of working and working regular jobs that anybody else would work all the time until eventually I ended up down in Phoenix. And part of my career was in golfing. I was a very avid golfer. I wanted to be a professional golfer. I was very good at golf. I still am. I'm probably in a single digit handicap at this point, but I don't golf too much anymore. But I did my golf career that I wanted took me down to Phoenix because it was the most logical choice to do. And I started to just try to find work there. It started out at golf courses and such, but eventually just trying to make ends meet. You're doing whatever job comes your way. And one of my jobs that I took on was working for, at the time it was called Cingular Wireless. Some of you guys may remember Cingular Wireless. It had the orange like X with the head on it. And I worked for what they call the Exchange by Mail program, where if your phone stopped working, you would give us a call and we would try to troubleshoot it over the phone. And if we couldn't, we would exchange it for a manufacturer's replacement. And then Cingular got bought out by AT&T, and we ended up shifting from Cingular over to AT&T. So I worked for Cingular, then I worked for AT&T. And this was a pretty decent job. I ended up becoming a manager, supervisor for my own little group that was running this. So I had about 12 agents below me. And anytime they would have a very angry customer because their cell phone wasn't going to be replaced immediately in the store, those would inevitably come to me and I would have to try to calm them down. And I gained a lot of customer service experience doing that. So anyway, I really, again, you'll notice there's like this huge gap of technology. Even though I was doing cell phone stuff, I wasn't software programming, I wasn't really in IT, but it was kind of IT, right? Trying to troubleshoot and diagnose these issues. Anyway, not long after that, I decided to, I got a job actually working at a Montessori school. And the Montessori school was looking for an administrator for their computer network, as well as a music teacher. And it just so happened that I was very well versed in music, so I thought I could teach, some elementary school kids and kindergartners about music. And yeah, I could go ahead and run their network for them. So that's what I did. And that was really my first IT job. That was like my actual first working hands-on computers across the school, networking, managing that whole thing, trying to figure out. I wrote their curriculum essentially for their keyboarding because I taught the older kids how to use a keyboard and how to type properly. And that was a really great job. It didn't last very long. It only lasted, I think, for one term, 1 year. But what it did do was it made me do, and this is what I wanted to get, and really kind of the point of the whole video, was I took that little tiny bit and I made something out of it. It was like the little seed that first time that I got the job that gave me administrator experience of a network. And even though it was just for, I don't know, I think it was like 8-9 months, I took that administrator thing, stuck it on my resume, made sure it was prominently on my resume, and I started looking for IT jobs. And this was back when Craigslist was still really, really big. And it was Craigslist was actually fairly new at the time, but you could still get jobs for free. You could post jobs for free up on Craigslist. And that's what I did. I ended up getting a job working for a gentleman by the name of Mark Yakel for a company called Prime Networks. And I don't remember exactly what year this was, but it was in the mid-2000s, I'd say. Maybe 2007. I'm going to guess 2006, somewhere in there. And Mark was great as far as being a friend. He actually ended up becoming my best man at my wedding. And Mark was a good guy to work for. He just basically had a bunch of customers. I did work for Keller Williams Realty, and several other different IT companies or different companies that needed IT work in the Phoenix area. And it was a great job. I really enjoyed it. I was able to just kind of drive around and go from place to place. And I loved being able to interact with different people, be challenged with different networking jobs or technical difficulties, fixing computers, making sure they were clean and free of viruses, free of malware, setting up the networks, setting up home office servers, installing software that was a little bit. Sometimes it was a little bit like new to me what we were doing, what we were setting up, but that was really where I started to sink my teeth into like real administrative duties, right? So taking systems that were taking an entire company and putting them on some sort of Windows, management system. So we had we had Active Directory and Exchange Mail server. BlackBerry server was something I would have to set up. So like real business, commercial, software that needed to be installed and ran and managed. And so I kind of grew that, right? I started out with that seed working for Montessori school, and I got really into the IT industry working for Mark. Now, Mark was a great guy to work for, but it really did not pay very well. But what I had in mind here, and this was the thing, is like even though it was a struggle financially for me to stick with it, I knew that the industry was really kicking off and there was money to be made there. And if I just put in my dues, if I just put in the time and gained the experience and gained the knowledge, then I would be able to use that once again on a resume. Just like I had used it on the resume to get the job there, if I continued to grow my resume and continue to grow the skills and the knowledge base that I had, I would be able to then offer that up to the next person that would be able to pay me a lot better. And that eventually did happen in the form of Gartman Technical Services. And a lot of you guys know me from Gartman Technical Services. You've been with me since I was working there. And I was working for Gartman for quite a while. And I started out on their IT side doing network administration, doing domain administration. But they also had, it just so happened, they had a software development side and a enterprise database division. And that was really where when I saw that and I saw that opportunity to possibly move over there and learn the skills of software development with them and database management and full stack application building, that was really it for me. That was kind of where I wanted to go. So you can see how what I'm consistently doing throughout my life has been taking this little bit of knowledge that I have and leveraging it to gain more knowledge and being patient, right? Being very, very patient with what I had and putting in the time and the work to develop the skills and the knowledge that I needed that could go on that resume and then impress them in the interview, right? And just be able to talk about the technology and the way that I knew I needed to in order to get the job. So that was how I ended up over at Gartman, was building that experience through Prime Networks. And then once I was in Gartman Technical Services, it didn't take very long, and I think it only took me about 2 years for me to say, hey, what are the chances of me doing software development for you guys instead of the IT side? And they were like, yeah, we can do that. So I got to tell you, like, this was one of the best opportunities I ever had, and it really changed my life working for Gartman. And the guys over there, Todd, Charlie, Ken, you guys are just fantastic. I don't know if you guys are going to watch this video, but I really appreciate everything that Gartman Technical Services did for me, because I wouldn't be where I am today without you guys. I really wouldn't. So basically, from Gartman Technical Services, I ended up, learning how to do software development. They primarily did Access databases, and that was fine. That was a great, from top to bottom, understanding the database, the business rules, how to work with record sets, and doing VBA coding, all the way up to user interface. How do you design an interface that's going to work for the user? And we worked on systems that, were used by thousands of employees. So it was it was a good time for me to learn. I had a very tough teacher in Mickey, Mickey, who was the father of Todd, who actually founded the company. I got to know him pretty well, but he was really tough to learn from. I gotta admit, he was very difficult. I think he would admit he's difficult. But he was good. He really helped show me the ropes. Um, but it was more I learned on my own, and then he would just kind of give me these things to do that would be really kind of tough, and he'd kind of show me some of the tricks and things that he knew, which was great. He showed me a lot of things. But the majority of my education really came from watching videos and reading online articles and stuff like that, and then just having experience, build something, just build something. And I remember the very first database that he had me write was actually a NFL football pick'em pool application that would track everybody's picks, and I could print out reports that would be, I would print out these reports and have the different employees fill out their, who they thought were going to win every Sunday, how many points, and then I'd enter it into the system. It would track how many points everybody had. And so it was like my very first application was doing that as far as a full-fledged database, back end, some sort of interface. And that was great. That was a lot of fun. That was a great experience. And I really, really, Gartman was a fantastic company to work for. But eventually came the day where, so I was doing a lot of Access database work, but I knew that the company needed to change as far as what their platform was that they were using. Because Access is great, don't get me wrong, and it has far more enterprise applications to it than most people realize you can do with Access. But I always knew, like, maintenance-wise and managing this thing, it was kind of difficult to work with. And I knew that the best way to go would be to go with Microsoft something. So that brought me to .NET. I'm not going to... We did have at one time a guy that was going to run our software division who was a PHP guy, and he emphasized he loved PHP. I tried to learn... Well, I did learn enough PHP to understand it and work with it, but I hated it. I really did not like PHP. I thought .NET was the right way to go, especially because, we learned VBA, right? Visual Basic. So it seemed obvious to me that going to .NET with Visual Basic .NET was the right thing to do. And as I was learning Visual Basic, I realized that almost every code example that I would run into about how to do something in .NET was written in C#. And I'm like, God, I keep running into this. I keep running into C# for all of these examples, and I can't write VB.NET very much if all these code examples are in C#. I keep having to translate out of C# into VB.NET. And I ended up looking at C# going, well, actually C# is a lot easier to work with. I wonder, because VB.NET is very verbose in its language, and it's harder to read, I think. C# makes sense because it's got, like curly braces and parentheses and all these things that, like, Visual Basic doesn't really do. So I decided to go and learn C#, and that was kind of where my career really took off. Was I decided C# was the language, and it's funny how I learned JavaScript, MIRC scripting, PHP, Visual Basic for applications. Like, I learned all these other languages before I came to C#, but C# is like my home. It's the thing that I love, just simply because it's just, in my opinion, the best language to know. It's a simple, easy thing that they just make the syntax really fun to work with and bring in so many tools. But that was kind of the reason why I got into C# was just because all of the code examples, when I started looking for, Visual Basic .NET examples, all I'd ever run into was C#, right? Really, really annoying when that happens. So anyway, I eventually spent many years doing that. I spent a lot of time building databases, building applications, working with .NET, working with C#, working with Visual Basic .NET, building these applications, and I decided, I wonder what kind of salary I could start looking at. After I spent probably about 4 or 5 years doing that kind of work with Gartman, I started looking into what kind of jobs could I get, what else was out there for me. And I really struggled with leaving. I really, really struggled with leaving Gartman Technical Services because I really love those guys. Todd is probably the best boss I ever had. The kind of guy that would just, every time that you left the office, he would make sure he thanked you for the work that you did. And he could have absolutely no idea what was going on or what you did for that day, but he was going to thank you for it. And I thought that was an absolutely amazing thing. And I try to model myself after that because I think that's the right way to be a manager, is to elevate the people that work below you, right? Um, so I did end up getting an offer to go make essentially double what I was at Gartman, and it was just like that. And I still struggled with it because I loved working for Gartman. I struggled at doubling my income, which was, it was silly to turn down, right? And then not long after that, I did get into working for what became, or what was at the time, Coder Camps, and now it's Wazoo. And the way that I got that job was I leveraged you guys. I leveraged the channel. I leveraged the fact that I had at the time, I think, about 45,000 subscribers. And I said, hey, I took all the great comments that you guys put on my very first, Introduction to Access 2013 video. I took a whole bunch of those comments. I printed them out on 6 sheets of paper. And in my interview, I was like, here's my resume. Here's a letter of recommendation that I have. But here's what you guys really want to know, is that I can teach. I can tell people how to do things. And I can do it in a way that they learn. And so I took those 6 pages of comments, handed them over, and almost immediate was like, so when can you start? I did have to go through another couple of interviews. I did have a more technical one where somebody kind of evaluated my teaching prowess and how much I knew about things and could explain things. And it was funny because I didn't think I got anything. I'm usually pretty good in interviews. I know how well I do, but man, David Koontz was a real challenge. I got nothing out of that guy. I thought I had completely failed that interview, but then just about a week later, I got the thumbs up that said, hey, we'd like for you to come work for us. So that's really kind of the full story. I really want to hear your guys' story too. So please drop me either in the chat right now, or if you want to drop it in the comments after we get done recording this video and it gets posted up on YouTube, go ahead and drop your comments in that section there. And I'd love to hear how you guys got into IT, software development, etc. And I know a lot of you guys do send me these messages about how you got into your job because of my Access videos. And I think that is so freaking awesome. That's exactly why I wanted to do these videos. That's why I wanted to teach. That's why I wanted to post these videos up on YouTube, is to give you guys the knowledge and the wisdom that you would need in order to have a career, build up a decent career, making a good living in this industry. So let's start off with Todd MS41 says, what's up, Steve? Is WebAssembly the future of web development? Todd, first of all, thank you very much for the question. Again, I just want to emphasize, I do want to kind of keep questions. I really do appreciate your questions, but I do want to make sure that we kind of stay focused onto the target topic of these videos. But I do appreciate the question. So is WebAssembly the future of web development? In my opinion, absolutely 100%. I know that there are a lot of technologies that come and go. I think people probably thought things like Flash and Silverlight were going to take over the web and replace JavaScript. And to a certain extent, they kind of did, but then they fell out of favor, and there was just more versatility with JavaScript. And it would always require a plugin, right? If you wanted to do Silverlight or Silverlight or Flash, right? Then you would need to have some sort of plugin installed in the browser. And now with HTML5, a lot of those graphical things that you could do with those two platforms are available to do within the browser, right? With HTML and CSS and JavaScript. So those technologies found no more usefulness. So why would WebAssembly be any different, right? Why would WebAssembly be any different of a thing than Silverlight or Flash? And the reason why is because WebAssembly is what we call a compilation target. It's a way to run an application within the browser that basically bypasses anything that's JavaScript. And as long as you can compile your code into this WebAssembly, you can run it. And Microsoft is really, I think, spearheading the campaign for the the bigger named companies, the other languages, let's call them, the other languages besides JavaScript, right? They're the ones that are really championing this. We're going to build some sort of platform that can run using WebAssembly in the browser. So you can code your application in C#, compile it, and run it in the .NET runtime within the browser. And right now, it's just a small little project. You can't really do much other than just build web pages. You can build a full SPA application, a single page application in the browser using C#. There's some interop there with JavaScript, so you can create a JavaScript function and call it from C#. I think that they have a reverse way of doing it too, where you can have JavaScript call a C# function as well. But just having this ability to basically code in C# and have it run in the browser as a single page application, right? Understand, this is not running on the server. The difference here is that I am uploading my application through the browser. It's getting installed in the client's browser essentially, and the client's browser is running it on the client side. It's not running on the server side. Okay, it's running in the client's browser on their end, which means that you can do some incredible things. And I think Microsoft doing this ahead of time really is great. I think we're going to see some other languages. I think we're going to see Python do it. I think we're going to see Java. I think Java already has a project that they're starting to work on this. All these other languages are going to start to follow suit, because if you can run it in C, or C, you can compile it to WebAssembly, which most of the virtual machines or runtimes, you can do that. And I think along with that, we're going to start to see maybe even operating systems, like full-fledged operating systems within the browser, is very much a possibility with this. So we'll see. I think that the direction is really good. The fact that now any language essentially can be run inside the browser means, yes, JavaScript is probably, I wouldn't say it's going to be the death of JavaScript. I think JavaScript is going to be around for a very, very long time, because having some sort of native language to run within the browser is always a good idea. I think will always be a good idea. But being able to compile any language to then run under the browser is a really, really good thing. And I think it's going to open up the world of possibilities of what you can do in the browser. I do see a possibility of things like, like UWP or oh boy, all of a sudden I'm forgetting names here. But being able to run basically like full-fledged Windows applications, WPF, there we go. So being able to like do a WPF application inside the browser, or I guess a Xamarin application too, if you wanted to. Something that can be compiled and run in the .NET runtime in the browser is pretty cool. Mrs. Kill 'em Softly. Hey, thank you, Miss Kill 'em Softly. I want to thank you for being a member. I really, really appreciate it. Again, everybody, it's $5 a month. If you're a member, you get to join me for the special live Q&As where it's members only, where only members are able to ask me questions. Also, you get 10% off the swag at my Teespring store. So if you're interested, this is a cup that I got here that I designed for myself. You guys get 10% off at the Teespring store. You guys also get you get thanked at the end of every video. As long as you're a member during that time, I will thank you at the end of the videos that I record for that session. So, Mrs. Killing 'em Softly, thank you so much for joining. I really, really appreciate it. But she says, yeah, I can hear and I agree with Charlie. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. You too can get into it. I think programming is one of those things that almost everybody can get into. Almost everybody. I think just about everybody has the mentality, right, of the mental capacity to get into it. It's just a matter of whether or not you're interested in it. That's the real question. Is it something that really draws you and is interesting for you? I think that's really what kind of filters people out. William Turnley says, hi, Steve. I am an avid fan. Your videos have been great. What I'm trying to do now, I drive for Lyft and Uber now. What I would like to do is put the business on a database. Where to start? Excel? William, thank you for your question. I really appreciate it. If you plan on continuing to work for Uber and Lyft, good for you. Yes, if you want to manage that, I would say Access Database should be just fine. I think Excel, you could probably store it in Excel, but I think you're not doing yourself any favors by doing that. I've never really found, once I learned Access, I found no use for Excel. Let me just put it that way. Like, Excel, it just doesn't have any real, I can store it in a data table and then export it to Excel if somebody really wants it in Excel. I just don't really have any way to, no need to manage my data in Excel anymore. All right, so, oh yeah, I was mainframe programmer analyst. I wrote and supported programs at the GAP Inc. at Gap Inc. Yeah, wow. Well, nice to meet you, William. Thank you for joining the channel. I appreciate that. That's cool. You're a mainframe developer. Wow, that's good stuff. I mean, that predates my era. That's for dang sure. My story spans 40 years. Yeah, that's right. I imagine if you're, mainframes, William, what I would love for you to tell me is, and there's kind of this thing going on about women in STEM and women in developer. I'm curious. I know that back in the earlier times, there were far more women doing programming. And it was kind of seen more as, I guess, a clerical position. I'm just curious, is that kind of your experience? Is that what you noticed back when you were doing mainframes? Okay, so Kent says, where did you find a coffee shop that is empty at 7:30 in the morning? Ah, yes, you love my lovely set. I love it, right? This is just obviously my back. This is just a green background for me. This is just a setup in my office. I can change the background to like Hawaii if you want. I got all sorts of different cool backgrounds, and I'm thinking I might show different backgrounds at the beginning of these things. So we'll just start out today with a simple little coffee shop. Felix says, hello, Steve. Thank you for making your great videos. I really learned so much from you about VBA and Access. Greets from Germany, and keep doing your awesome stuff. Well, thank you very much, Felix. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad you enjoyed the videos. I'm still planning on doing them. I know I'm doing these coffee in the mornings with Steve, or coffee with Steve in the mornings, but I'm still going to be doing, tutorials. It's still kind of my bread and butter. It's still what I know you guys love, and so don't worry. I'm not changing the direction entirely of the channel. I just thought this would be really cool to start doing and having a conversation with you guys. Julio says, or no, I'm sorry, not Julio. Sorry, text is a little small on my screen. It's, João Ribeiro? I think João Ribeiro? I always butcher names. I apologize. Hi, Steve. I was a teacher for 15 years. No background whatsoever about programming. I was a teacher of arts. Now I'm in the programming business working at Lisbon in Portugal. Oh. Started 1 year ago, and I have a channel on YouTube about programming, all in Portuguese, with about 3,000 videos. Got my job also because of my YouTube channel. That's great. Yeah, that's it. Like, that's exactly the point that I'm trying to make, is you leverage what you've got, right? You get any little bit of nugget of your skill and technical expertise. That's what you leverage. Like, I do this. And if you've got a YouTube channel, if you've got a blog, if you've got a LinkedIn profile, if you've got a GitHub repository, or a GitHub account, like, all these things you have to leverage. They go beyond the resume, right? You have to go beyond that resume. That's really kind of what I think makes for a successful career, is finding those little nuggets of knowledge and information that you can use to leverage into a better position. And it just takes time. You have to be willing to spend the time and the dedication and learning those new skills that you can then put on the resume and leverage in those interviews. All right, I'm going to have to start slimming down here. It looks like the last question I have is from Todd MS, and I'm going to wrap it up here after this. My bad, I started 15 years ago in a family business. I've moved on, and I'm now at a corporate gig. Todd, don't worry about it, man. Don't worry about it. It's okay. You can ask me any question. I'm fine. I'm fine with any question that you ask. I'm just trying to make sure that we keep it on the narrow with these videos as much as I can. I don't mind veering a little bit too much, but I'm sure people who want to come and watch this video later on will only want to hear about the topic, right? Otherwise, it kind of goes into other areas and people get a little confused when they try to go back and find, hey, there was that thing that Steve talked about, but which video was it? And then they're going to get confused. But don't worry about it, Todd. So 15 years ago, in your family business, and now you're at a corporate gig. I'm curious, Todd. Go ahead and send me a follow up comment, or if you wanted to, a message. I'm curious, how did you end up going from the family gig into the corporate? And like, was that a difficult challenge for you? Did you have to like, was it really hard giving up the family thing? Was there a lot of pressure from the family to stay with it? Or was it just kind of one of those situations where the business went under, or the family was just, it overgrew and it really wasn't a family business anymore? It was just kind of like, sometimes these family businesses, they grow so large that they kind of lose that family atmosphere. They've got a lot of employees and stuff, and I'm just kind of curious. I'd love to hear more about what happened with you. So thank you again, everybody. I want to also thank all of my channel members. So this is Ron Howe, who's our latest member. Thank you so much for signing up, Ron. Olubayu Olasakin. I always say him for last whenever I'm going through these, but I gotta say thank you very much. He was actually my very, very first member. So thank you very much, Olubayu. Mrs. Kill 'em Softly, who joined us earlier today, she was actually my second member. So I really want to thank you very much, Mrs. Kill 'em Softly. I hope you are continuing to enjoy the material. SAA Consulting, Rishi, a gentleman who's asked not to be named, Kanan Krishnan, For Technical, Samuel Knetsia Tabiri, Jim Griggs, and HRU Bricks, which I believe your name was actually Henry, if I recall correctly. So thank you for joining, Henry, and once again, Ron. Thank you guys so much for being members. Again, if you want to be a member, it's only $5 a month. You get 10% off in my Teespring store if you're looking for a little swag, like a coffee mug like this one. I got some t-shirts in there. I got a nice beach towel that I love. Yeah, if you guys want to do that. And then also, of course, you get mentioned at the end of these videos. You get mentioned when I'm done doing these videos. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. I really appreciate it. If you're interested in signing up, once again, all you have to do is just go to programmingmadeeasy.com and just click on the join button that's there on my YouTube channel, and you can get started there. You also, probably the biggest benefit I guess most people would have is that with that $5 a month, you also have direct access to ask me questions. At any time, you can just submit what I call an issue ticket, where you guys can submit your issues to me, and you send me some screenshots so that I can get kind of a better idea what's going on. Maybe even send me your database if you need me to look at it. And we start up a dialogue. We start up a conversation about what's going on with your application, and maybe I can help you out a little bit with it. So once again, just $5 a month, all you have to do. So thank you so much for joining me, guys. Joy, tell you what, okay, I'll answer one more question here. Joy Rebello says, "Hi, Steve. Thanks for your great efforts. What you are doing for all of us. I am not a highly qualified person, but I really learn a lot from you while I start to learn Access." Well, you're welcome, Joy. I'm really glad. I'm glad that you guys are able to take the skills and the knowledge that I put up here on YouTube and are able to do something to make a career out of it, right? And build up a life for yourselves. That's what I think is so great about the software development industry. And part of my story is exactly that, just learning a skill that ended up really skyrocketing my career and giving me sufficient income to do basically whatever I want now. I mean, I can go live wherever I want. I can afford just about, I can't go to some of these really high fancy, I can't go live in Beverly Hills or anything like that, but I can move anywhere I want to. I can go wherever I want to. I can do some really fun and enjoyable work. I could still do software development, but I love the fact that I'm teaching at WazU, Steve Wozniak's online education program, where we teach you how to do software development. And I think that's probably something else I should mention is what I'm doing now. Working for WazU is great. You guys can get an education online. It's compared to a college education, it's way cheaper to get. And you guys already probably see the benefits of knowing some of this stuff, being able to leverage that information into a better job, knowing full stack. And what we teach there is we actually have 3 different divisions. We have cybersecurity, we have data science, we have full stack web. And I basically head up the full stack web program. We got a couple of great instructors in Cassandra and Ammon. We've got some great mentors that also are there day and day and night for our students. And really our goal is to make you software developers and then get you a job. Like that's what we do is we get you a job. We have a career services team that gets you job placement and all sorts of stuff. So it's more than just, college education where you just come out and get some sort of degree and then there you go. Now you're thousands of dollars in debt. It's not like that. We focus our material towards what our partners tell us they're looking for out in the industry. We try to get you guys the knowledge that you need in order to grow in the industry and have the skills that you need in order to be a successful person from day one when you're on the floor, and be able to pass those interview questions. Right? We have practice interviews and stuff that we do all the time. You have a project that you build. You start to build up your own GitHub repository and GitHub profile. We help you out with your resume. Like there's all sorts of stuff that we do to provide you guys some help and get you really going in the industry. And that's something that I don't think you get a whole heck of a lot of out there today. So if you guys are interested, WazU, it's pretty simple. Just waz-u.com. You just go there. We're about to roll out a pretty cool thing. We're going to be rolling out here pretty soon a way for you guys to just kind of see what it's like, see what the program is like before you decide to hop on, and pay the tuition or anything. We also have scholarships and stuff that we offer based upon your situation. So if you guys are interested, go check it out. waz-u.com. It's Steve Wozniak. You'll see him right there on the main page. It's kind of hard to miss. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed this little coffee with Steve. I'm interested in hearing your feedback. I'd also really like to hear, again, how did you get into IT? How did you get into software development? I know a lot of you guys got into it because of watching these Access videos, and it got you, kind of working on something at your job, and then that blossomed into a career. And I'm really interested in hearing those stories. So please do drop me those comments in the comment section below this video. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a happy day at work. Bye-bye.